Sounds good.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Norwalk Board of Education Ad-Hoc Inclusion and Educational Justice Committee. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025, and the time is 5:00 p.m. With me tonight is board member Karen Nelson-Bakey. Howard White is not here with us, hoping he will join us later. Also here tonight is Deputy Superintendent Sandra Fayowis, and you guys have got to tell me your names because I cannot remember who else is on this call. I know we've got somebody from Brian McMahon, leadership from Brian McMahon. I don't see your name there. And Adam Reynolds, I see you here with us. And I see Executive Director, Leadership and Development, Allison Brady Johnson. Anybody else? Let's see here.
May I?
James.
Is that okay? Yeah, we have LaShante James from Brian McMahon.
Okay. And
Mr.
Alden Burnham.
Yeah, Alden Barham is from our data research team at Central Office. And Kadir Abdul. Kadir, did I say that correctly?
That's good.
Thank you.
Salam, yes.
Okay, Salam. Who is also here from Brian McMahon. And soon when we go over the agenda, it'll make sense why everybody is on here.
Yep. We are going to not vote on the minutes because there was a problem being able to get those, so we are going to table that. Since we are not, well, actually, public comments, since we're recording, is there anybody there wouldn't be any public comments, right? Because there's no way they can access this. So next on the agenda for review and discussion, we will get highlights from equity school visits. So Ms. Brady Johnson, are you going to speak to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sandra, are you going to share? Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Brady Johnson. I'm one of the executive directors of leadership development. And tonight we are going to share with you some highlights from the Rutgers team equity school visits. As you know, we've been working with the Rutgers team around developing systems and structures in our schools that dismantle some of the disparities between our students and to ensure that all of our students at Norwalk Public Schools are receiving an equitable education. And so part of that process with the equity teams is really looking at school data and seeing which students have access to various programming and classes and making sure that all students have equitable access. And so this evening, we have two schools here. We have West Rocks Middle School. We have Principal Dr. Adam Reynolds here. And from Brian McMahon, we have Qadir Abdul Salam, who will share with you a little bit about the work that they have been doing around equity and some of the progress that they have been making with this work. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Adam Reynolds, and I'm going to allow him to share.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk about the progress that we've made and the work that we've been really doing over the last number of years, as Allison just shared. Feel fortunate to be partnered with Dr. Fergus and his team over the last few years. He's provided a lot of support around professional development. He's come on school visits, done walkthroughs with us, worked with our team frequently. And we've been able to work with him on student focus groups. And he's been able to report out him leading and his team leading professional development and enabling us to really self-reflect, grow, being more self-aware, what's in our backpack and how we can make sure that we're providing access and opportunities for all of our students, especially those who really have historically been underrepresented. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot of self-reflection, and we're really proud of the work that we've been doing at West Rocks the last few years. We looked at our data to start, and I'll remember a couple summers ago, we were actually in a separate room at one of our high schools, and we, as a district, looked at an underrepresentation of really students, Black and African American students, as well as Hispanic students in our AP classes and honors at the high school level, which I know that Brian McMahon is going to talk about in just a second. But we really drilled down to how do we impact that as a middle school? If we aren't setting our students up for success in accelerated math and providing them opportunities and gifted and talented, then in ninth grade, 10th grade, and beyond, they would not be able to access some of the data points that we looked at as well. So we really targeted first gifted and talented as well as accelerated math. And just for the purposes of our presentation today, I'll share the work that we've been doing in accelerated math as well as our supportive environment, which will be in the next slide. So if you go back just one slide, I'm just going to kind of share some of the data points. We looked at our total enrollment currently is 661 at West Rocks. And when we look at the breakdown of how each race and ethnicity is represented within our accelerated math classes. That's 6th, 7th, and 8th. We have an overrepresentation of white and Asian students and an underrepresentation of Black and African American, as well as Hispanic Latinx. So we've really targeted and looked at the numbers to be as close to proportional as we possibly can, and we're really proud of the work that we did. I'm just going to talk specifically around our Black and African American students because we are proportional as of today. Over the last 2-3 years, we've really worked at identifying the students not only in NWA and standardized tests, but also teacher recommendation if they're close, and how we can provide some of that support to allow them, whether it be fall, winter, or spring, access into accelerated math. So at the beginning of the year, we saw a 6% enrollment, and that includes some of our 5th grade feeders who recommend accelerated math for students. We saw an underrepresentation, so we saved some of those seats. We also made sure we pushed in the spring, and then we again moved students in the fall after our NWA and moved them into accelerated math. That was part of teacher recommendation. That was part of our math coach working with administration and our equity teams in order to identify some of those students to move up. What I'm really proud of is not only did we just drop them in, and this is really the work that we did as an equity team and with Dr. Fergus as a whole math group and equity team in general, how are we going to provide the tier 2 support, extra support for our students who are moving in to accelerated math? For example, when we moved our 10% of Black and African American students into accelerated math classes in the beginning of the year, we then began a cycle of individualized support outside of the math class in order to make sure that they were ready. Last year, we were able to utilize our GT teacher during our WIN period, our intervention period, who was also a math certified teacher, and were able to provide 30 minutes a day to make sure those students were set up for success by the time they got into their accelerated math classes. This year, we have our second math improvement teacher actually running small groups of those accelerated math students who are just under the cusp and the cutoff necessarily, but we're ready to move up. And like I said, historically underrepresented, to provide that tier 2 support to make sure they set up for success. So super proud of the work that we're doing, and just to give you a reference point, like the overrepresentation still does exist with white as far as Asian Pacific Islander in those classes, but we're making headway and we're proportional in our Black and African American, and we're getting closer in our Hispanic with just an additional challenge of our MLL students, some of our newcomers, some of the access there. So really excited about the work that we're doing for accelerated math. So the next one, and I'll be brief. The other part of the really looking at our data is our really supportive environment or discipline or behavior data. We have an overrepresentation in suspensions, and we're not alone in this. However, all we can do is really look at and target our own interventions. So our school-wide goal from the beginning of the year to the end of this year, there'll be at least a 25% reduction in the total number of incidents of fighting and altercations, from 43 to 32 at the end of the year. We looked at that in the bar graph. That was the highest rate, and there was a significant overrepresentation of Black and African American students, especially boys and those with an IEP. So in general, we have about a 60% reduction in overall incidents. And if we look at the 1700, which is the code for fighting and altercations, when we drill it down, it's actually 53.3 reduction in Black and African American suspension students. Black and African American students suspended this year as opposed to last year at this time. So we are well ahead of their goal. And the reason for that, and working collaboratively with our team, not only the professional development, the equity work around who we are, what we expect versus how we can support our students. Instead of consequence necessarily, we have individualized plans. We met over the summer. We created those plans for students with a higher suspension rate. They check in regularly. There's positive reinforcement. There's also increased supervision and visibility during those times, and we looked at our data to identify those. And we also really we invested in the ruler program, and I could talk to you for hours about that. But we really found a great deal of success in our social emotional learning and wrapping services around all of our students with an increased focus on how we are feeling, identifying that, and then regulating our emotions. And that's the work we did last year into this year, and it's really provided and proved dividends. So our data is really moving in the right direction in both a supportive environment, discipline, especially around through the lens of equity, as well as our accelerated math growth.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone have any questions for Adam before we move into our next highlight?
No, just comments. Just glad to see that we have some improvement in the AT specific to math, and also glad to see these numbers at West Bronx. I know we've had some challenges there, and so it's really good to see that we're making some.
Thanks.
Yeah, I had one question, and I don't know if this is part of our equity work at all. I don't know if I've seen reporting on this type of information, but are we also, when we're talking about accelerated math, looking at boys versus girls? Because
Yes.
there is a gender gap, right, when it comes to math. And so are we looking at that at all as part of this equity work?
Yeah.
In math?
We are. And what we could do, Kara, is for the next meeting or the next several meetings, we can bring you guys bits of the data that Dr. Fergus has put together to just sort of like keep refreshing what the type of data that we're gathering and the subgroups, like the gender subgroups, the ethnic subgroups. We can incorporate that into our meetings just so that it's staying at the top of mind for us.
Right.
If you prefer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, I know that like, obviously we're looking at like, ethnicity as like the primary here and what we're doing, but I would be interested to see, especially from math, how it breaks out by gender.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, anything else
work.
you guys want to see, we can actually, in preparation for the next meeting, we could put that together.
And that math, that was district-wide, or was that just for West Rock? That was district-wide, right?
Oh, that's just us.
That was just West Rocks, right?
West Rocks. Yeah.
And there are other schools that are middle schools who are doing this work as well around accelerated math.
Yes. What we thought would be useful today is to actually have two very specific school examples to show you how the goal that they put into their school improvement plan aligns with the work that Dr. Fergus has been doing district-wide and with the schools. And then also just the schools are utilizing the Rutgers team to actually create impact. So it was sort of a more granular look at how the Rutgers team has impacted some of our schools. And then there's variability in success because there's also variability in how schools are applying the feedback that the Rutgers team gives them. And, so like with everything, we're highlighting two places where the work has been really impactful. But there are other examples. We could have asked several people, but we thought that Dr. Reynolds and the work that Q has also done with Eddie has been, and with Lashante. I don't want to keep leaving Lashante out of the conversation, but Eddie does name Q all the time, Lashante, just saying. So,
It's okay. It's a committee meeting, so we're getting
exactly. It's an equity
So
team. It's an approach, but
we're making.
for next time, let us know if you want to see any highlights from anything else. We're happy to pull anything for you, okay? Because we do have it. If you're okay, I'm going to continue sharing and then we'll hear from the Brian McMahon team.
And the good thing about getting the middle school perspective and then how that sort of progresses into high school.
Yeah.
Correct.
So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Abdul Salam.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. We've done some good work in the last couple of years at Brian McMahon around our equity goals. And this equity goal is rooted in the disproportionality in underrepresentation of Black and Latinx students in our upper level CCR courses. So what we discovered is, and I have to tell you, I used no real baseline data here. It was who is in our school now in grade 9 last year. And I'm going to look to see how many of our students really met the achievement metric for the capability or potential to do honors upper level work. So as a district, we use the NWEA, and we've defined sort of the 60th percentile as that sort of cut score for students who have that, higher academic potential. And so what I found is by looking at all of the 190 Black and Brown students who came from our feeder schools, that at the time, 56 of those students with high NWEA scores hadn't been recommended for honors level courses in grade 9. So what my team did and I is we took all those students, we created a cohort from them. Right now, they're in 10th grade. We call them the talented 10s. So our talented 10s all had high NWEA scores. So we decided and realized that there was no real, there was an inconsistent or newly established norms as it related to the recommendation process. So we said, you know what, we have to get these students into classes that reflect their true academic potential. And so we decided I'm looking at the second tile now from the top, is that by spring of 2024, last year, we had to establish a collaborative process between our feeder schools, Ponus and Rhoton, to ensure an equitable system for recommendation into honors courses and our magnet pathways. And again, it was all based on achievement data. So whether that was NWEA and their 8th grade grades coming in. And in working with Dr. Lewis and Mr. Singleton and sort of as Ms. Fayol has referenced or Allison, and working with our middle schools to make sure that trajectory continues correctly for our students. So with Dr. Lewis and Mr. Singleton and their instructional coaches and their APs and their counselors, we had several meetings, I would say around February of 2024 to create this process, and we did it. So as a result of that, it resulted in automatic enrollment in our honors and humanities and honors humanity and STEM courses. And there's significant research provided by Dr. Fergus to me and our team about the impact and the benefit of automatic enrollment based on students coming in with the high achieving test scores. So it was really positive to do that, to create that system and structure. And I will say that we're going to continue to refine that process this year to make sure that we work out any of the kinks that may have existed with recommendations coming into grade 9. And what we did as a result of finding those students, the talented 10s and the new group that we're calling the Divine Nines, is we developed 2 honors cohorts that we're calling. The class of 2027, those are the 10s, and 2028, which is the 9s. And what we are really working to do is build a critical mass of an affinity group of students, Black and Brown affinity group of students in these classes to support one another. I spoke with our one and only Black diploma candidate this year in the class of 2025. And what she said she missed most about being in the IB classes was not having another student of color. I mean, true story. She just felt that, she felt that she had support at home. Her older sister was a DP candidate. She was like, I knew I could do the work and I knew academically that I belonged, but having peers who sort of could understand me in a lot of ways culturally made a significant difference. And that's the root of this equity goal, is to build that critical mass of students who belong. Here at Brian McMahon, we have this saying, IB stands for I belong and I believe. And that's how we feel about, all of our kids who are, show that capability. So as it relates to the cohorts, we went from 50 in 23-24, and we have grown by 94% to 97 students in our honors cohort in 24-25. So that's a significant amount of growth just coming in from our feeder schools. So now that they're identifying students correctly and placing them and recommending them correctly, we're in. In order to support these cohorts, we have community builder assemblies. We have our equity committee, and each equity committee member has 5 to 6 students that we mentor in our Talented Tens cohort as we are moving now towards junior year and enrollment into our IB diploma programs. We do monthly check-ins. We have small group information sessions. In fact, we have a really intense IB presentation prepared for our cohort next week to really make sure they have the information that they need to be ready to make that decision to participate in the diploma program. So that's a lot of the work that we've done with teachers. Now, I like to say we're burning both ends of the candle here by not only working with students to get them in the classrooms, but then how are we supporting teachers with teaching a culturally diverse group of students? And so hence we enter culturally responsive teaching and culturally relevant pedagogy. And this year, every BMS teacher has experienced 2 culturally relevant and culturally responsive teaching professional learning sessions. We did 2 sessions back to back in October to really introduce this new language, this new equity literacy around the type of instruction that our students need once they're in these classrooms. And just to continue building that equity literacy and capacity with our equity team, we're now engaged in a book study using the book that was provided to us by the district, actually, which I'm thankful for, which is Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by the legend in equity, Zaretta Hammond. So we're, really trying to support our kids, build academic identity, a sense of belonging, and who are we in the Brian McMahon High School community in every space that is safe and brave. And same for the teachers. Our teaching staff is predominantly white and doesn't really share the same cultural backgrounds, but that doesn't matter. To be a culturally responsive teacher, the first aspect of that is really trying to build a sense of community and environment in your classroom and care for kids. And all of our teachers do that. And so I'll end with just these last 2 parts, which is the goals for the year. And then to summarize where we've come from, lastly, with our first cohort. So by June 2025, 90% of our year 1 honors cohort, this is our current freshman class of 2028, will be enrolled in honors and AP courses for 10th grade. And essentially to be on track for IB courses in grade 11 and beyond. In our current students in the Talented Tens, this is our cohort from the class of 2027, will be enrolled in at least 1 honors and AP class. And the goal for this group is to increase our DP and CP enrollment by 20%, by 10%. So I'm really excited about seeing how we can change the look and the tone of our IB classes moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Q. Does
Questions there?
anyone? Yes.
Or do you have any questions before did you want to?
No, I don't have any questions, just, a comment that it's so great to, see the progress, the plan, the flow of how you've planned this with the cohorts and the numbers and the goals, and it's just it's good stuff.
So this procedure that you implemented to identify the students, is this something that is firm? Because before it was kind of a willy-nilly way of how kids were identified for courses. So can we now say that this is a plan that is kind of carved in stone as much as it can be, so that folks know this is the process that we're going to follow to make sure that the kids are identified?
To your point, that's what we would like it to be. Maybe it becomes a board policy one day. But we're having a follow-up set of meetings this year with Dr. Lewis and Mr. Singleton, just to make sure we lock in and document this process.
Right.
I was talking with Dr. Lewis and Mr. Singleton, and they are actually participating in these meetings to make sure that our students are getting to that level. They're looking at test scores. They're doing all the data work to support it. So we're gonna memorialize this in print and see if this is something that we can use, maybe from West Rocks to Norwalk High and our other schools in the district.
Good for you all for doing that, because I know this is I've said before, this is a long time insidious, icky thing that has been going on for quite some time. So to be able to dig in, really attack it at its root to see some achievement is pretty amazing. Thank you.
Allison, are you going to take on this next piece? I'll
Yes.
continue. Okay.
Okay, so what you just heard about was the work of Dr. Fergus's team, the Rutgers team with us, that really focuses on the systems and structures and protocols that we have in place that leads to disproportionality, and how we could sort of restructure those systems to ensure that all of our students have access. And as we shared with you in our previous meeting, we have been working with Paul Forbes, whose program is Leading with Hearts and Minds. And in this program, he has worked with our principals and assistant principals during our summer leadership retreat, as well as 2 of our monthly principal AP meetings, as well as conducted sessions with our equity team leads. He's worked with central office. He's also presented to the board. And some of the topics of the various sessions have focused on perspective taking, exposure to counter stereotypical exemplars, intergroup contact, really slowing down in individuation. And in these sessions, it really focused down to human connection and how we are connecting with each other, and we're more connected to each other than we know. And the idea is really to think about the people behind the systems and structures who are doing this work, to really uncover their own biases. And biases are not only about race and ethnicity. There are biases about economics, about gender, as you mentioned, Kara. There's lots of different biases that we hold about a variety of different things, about who could play a particular sport, or what a person looks like who plays a particular sport. And so he has really engaged our community in learning around these various topics. And now our equity leads and our school leaders are working together with their equity teams to really create a professional learning series at the school level that will be rolled out this spring. And so we're really excited about this work because the hearts and minds work, along with the work that we've been doing with Dr. Fergus's team around the systems and structures, really go hand in hand in ensuring that this work continues and goes deeper.
So the only thing I will mention is that Allison said, oh, I think we're going to leave that for next steps. We'll revisit it, but it has to do with this topic. So with that being said, are any questions regarding the Leading with Hearts and Mind work?
Nope.
No, just glad to see that we're continuing with it because
Yeah.
it was very impactful when I forget his name.
Paul Forbes.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mr. Forbes, when he was with us at our retreat this past
Yeah.
fall.
And it also allows the schools to have a model by which they can actually turnkey some of these conversations with their staff. And so it's been a really welcome
Program.
evolution, right?
Yeah.
Of the equity work, because we've started with some things and now this is sort of another layer.
Yep.
All right.
So,
Thanks for that. So I guess the final two will be updated
Yep.
on my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper measure
yes.
and grading on equity.
So I'm going to turn it to Kadir and Lashante. So just so that you understand, my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper was a program that was brought on with Dr. Estrella when she joined the district. It was previously led by Dr. McBride, and we do still have some consultants that help us guide the work. However, we did really want to make sure that we're building the capacity within our own district to be able to maintain the work, help grow the program, and keep evolving in this work with these students. And so then Lashante and Kadir had been very involved with the work since the onset of both programs. And I asked them once I took this role, if they would be our district leaders when it comes to my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper. And they, luckily for us, they said yes. And so then they've been leading in this work since the beginning of this school year. But I do want to say that they've been here from the very start. And we owe a lot of the success to Kadir and Lashante, but I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to ask Kadir and Lashante if you guys would please share the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Sandra. Good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be able to present to you this evening about the work of my brother's keeper and my sister's keeper. We have some data for you. My brother's keeper currently has 16 mentors across the 4 middle schools and across the 4 high schools, and 95 participating scholars. And my sister's keeper has 21 mentors and 101 scholars across the 4 middle schools and 4 high schools. We average about 10 to 12 participants per school. And I know in the larger comprehensive high schools, we often end up with a waiting list because there's so much interest in the program, but due to resources, we really have to limit how many we can take on. But we do take some of the young ladies under our wing or young men who express interest so that they have a positive connection with an adult in the building, even if we can't have them participate in the program fully, because it lets us know that they long for some type of relationship with someone. This year, because we're in our third full year, we did pilot the program as a half a year program when we first started it out. And then this will be our third full year of doing it. We did go through a little bit of rebranding so that when people see our logo, they know exactly what it represents. I'm going to speak to my sister's keeper logo and why it is what it is. When I was asked to lead the program by Dr. McBride, he kind of said, I have a female component or a girls component to my Brother's Keeper program and make it what you want. And I'm the type of person who likes to work with a team. So once I got names of women who were interested in being mentors, we met, we talked about our personal experience as students and how we were able to become who we are now, the influential women in our lives. And one of the things that came up was insecurities about maybe hair texture, skin color, and how we overcame that. And one of the things was the importance of a mirror. So that's why there's a mirror in the middle at the heart of the photo, of the logo, and as well as just learning how to love yourself, but also having another person reflect as your sister in the process too. So that mirror was really at the center of what we did, and it came out of a conversation. It was a collective idea. So that's why we have My Sister's Keeper and the Reflections of Sister. I'm going to let Q go over his logo.
Okay, thank you. The My Brother's Keeper initiative was initially started by President Obama. So this is a continuation of that nationwide, sort of brotherhood and program. And this symbol was chosen by Dr. McBride. It's a West African symbol, the Ndinkra symbol. And the African words that go with it are Nea Ope, Seobedi, Hene, Takia No. And what that means is in order to be king, he who wants to be king must first learn to serve. So the essence is rooted in African spirituality and community service. So hence the words leadership and service.
And this year when we met and planning out the scope of what this year would look like, one of the things we talked about was needing to calibrate as not only Q and I, working together for the first time leading this, but the mentors and the expectations of the mentors. We needed time to do that. And Ms. Fayos was gracious enough to help us carve out time to have our first ever mentor retreat. And it was a full day retreat in Cranberry Park. And the adults, it was interesting to see how impactful this program is and meaningful to the adults. It has the same effect on the adults as it does as the students, because oftentimes our educators of color are a small population in our buildings, and they long for a connection and they long to feel like a sense of belonging. And in this space, it was safe and brave, as Q said earlier. So it was an empowering experience. Many people walked away with feedback like, I kind of need this regularly, even though, we need to work. They really longed for the opportunity to connect in. But we did come together with a shared definition of what a mentor is, what a mentor does, and what we'll do for the remainder of the year. So I'm going to start with saying that our idea of the year is we kick off with what we call a rites of passage, which is an overnight trip. And it is in Kent, Connecticut at Club Getaway. And this is an opportunity for students and mentors to participate in ropes courses, different challenges, and then to connect. We stay in cabins together and we get to know each other outside of the school building. And I presented a challenge to my mentors and my scholars and said, you have to attempt every challenge. Even if you don't succeed, you have to attempt. So I found them holding me accountable when I was like, there is no way I'm doing this. And the girls were like, nope, you said I had to try. And I did. And they were keeping tallies. But then I saw the girls encouraging me. Like there was one wall I could not climb. You should see the picture. It's hilarious. I should have put it up here in the middle of the slide. But they were like, you did so well. You hit two of the spikes or whatever. And so they were encouraging, even though I was down on myself, and it showed me how they can be uplifting to me too. And we had opportunities of journaling, doing some self-reflection, and this whole idea of reflections of sisterhood came out as well. So we had our rites of passage October 21st and 22nd, and then Q, your rites of passage.
Yes, exactly the same energy of really building, the theme for our rites of passage is brotherhood. It is, really approaching your brother so that they know you're not out to harm them physically or emotionally. Many times our young boys have words for each other that don't seem like real words, terms of endearment. So for the entire retreat, it was all about how to speak to, how to respect, and how to support your brother. As the saying goes, am I my brother's keeper? And they all scream, yes, I am. I mean, that's just how we address each other and speak to each other. So it was really positive. And the essence of the retreat is to get away from everything and have it just be us.
Mhm.
And that was just really powerful for these young men. And even when I see our middle school members of MBK, it's like brotherhood the minute we see each other. So just to get to know sixth graders in the district and seventh graders, I don't see them every day, but when we get together, it's so powerful, and it's that same energy for our mentors. So this thing does a lot, and I really look forward to it. I mean, I would probably say, and same for Miss James, once a week, someone is asking me, how can I get into
And I can,
MBK?
yeah.
So
So, and I'm sure we can take up a lot of time, but just to give you a scope of our year, we meet monthly. We usually try to keep it school-based, and we go to different buildings throughout the district. And each month has a different theme. Just to give you an idea, some of the themes that we cover in MSK, we talked about vision building and teamwork, gratitude, entrepreneurship. Our next convening is about strategic advocacy, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And I do have a partnership that is developing, and we're going to talk about confidence and girl power in March, and I'm really looking forward to that. And we also talk about self-love and image. And then Q, your topics?
yes, like I said, our brotherhood, empathy and compassion, integrity. This month we're doing leadership and strategic advocacy, resilience, service, community, and teamwork. And we introduced something last month, hip hop mindfulness. I have so many videos of these guys rapping and really getting into it. I didn't think they would speak and really form a cipher, but we did. And it's funny, of all the things I think that are going into their ears, we had a little 16-bar freestyle in the cipher, and the chorus was, God is good and we getting out the hood. I was just like, I'm all about that. Let's do that.
The one thing I failed to point out is that both of our convenings begin with mindfulness, because we know that, our students are struggling with anxiety. Some of them have some emotional regulation challenges. So we're trying to give them tools that we hope that they will apply when they're in the building or in situations. So we've been practicing mindfulness before we begin every convening. The boys have been doing it for a couple years. And I thought, seeing that last year was a lot of incidents with girls, physical incidents, that it would be helpful for us to implement as well. So we're doing that across the board. In addition to our monthly convenings, we do offer enrichment opportunities, which again, Ms. Fayos has been very supportive of. The most recent one that we did, which was incredible, was the inaugural Black Men in White Coats event in Waterbury, Connecticut. Initially, reading the name, you would think, and sorry, my son is coughing, you would think that is geared towards just boys, but there was a woman's component, which Q picked up on, which I'm glad he did, because he brought students from both organizations, and they met doctors of color from all over the country, but some of them were born and raised in Waterbury in some of the roughest neighborhoods. And our girls had opportunity to speak one-on-one with female doctors. They went to breakout rooms where they did hands-on blood pressure checks. They learn how to do CPR. And we know that this is something we can expand hopefully next year and expose our students to, as they do plan to come back. And I think they're going to Hartford next year. Another enrichment opportunity is our spring cultural and college tour. We started in DC our first year of this program last year, and we visited Howard University, the African American Cultural Museum, National African American History and Cultural Museum in DC. Last year, we went to Philadelphia. We visited Temple University. We went to the African American Museum in Philadelphia. And we also did a street tour of, I think it was 6th Street. Historic neighborhood. And we're hoping to have a tour of Boston coming up this year for the spring. So we try to expose them to other places as well as to the college experience. We try to weave all that in. The next thing, the biggest project for us, which you're going to hear about when Alden comes up to speak, is measuring our impact in a way that you can see it, over a graph or on a slide. We'll get we'll interview student focus groups and get some qualitative data from our students. But this is just a view of us at our getaway with the students. And I don't know, I still don't like your picture, Q. I'm just kidding. But
That's
this
okay, my
just
sis.
to give you an idea of the group that we had there. We had two large groups that had the opportunity. So next would be measuring the impact of on our students.
I just want last point. When we went to Temple last year, one of our equity consultants, Dr. Cecil Barnes, he had just earned his PhD from Temple, and so I called him up. I said, "MBK is in town." He said, "I'll meet you at the student center." So Dr. Barnes came down and he spoke to the boys. He could really speak because he knows the data of Norwalk, having been part of the equity consultant. So it was just positive to leverage that relationship built in Norwalk to be able to show these young men Dr. Barnes, and he got to speak to him, and it was just a great time. So again, I think what Norwalk is doing is so fruitful and beneficial for all of our young people and the old people too.
This is wonderful. What you're talking about is so impactful. It's so meaningful. It's so thoughtful. And I understand that you all are doing this as a volunteer. I mean, this is in addition to your work in your buildings. And so I applaud you for that, for making
All the
that.
mentors are volunteers.
All the mentors are volunteers. Yep.
That's the important thing to keep in mind.
Amazing.
And so then it's really commendable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
And-
for all your efforts. It's wonderful, the things that you're doing.
And we wanted to take the time to actually talk to you about an exciting project like LaShante just forecasted, and it's how are we measuring the impact. And so for that, we asked Alden to come and speak with you and talk to you guys about how we are measuring the impact of these programs, and hopefully we can replicate these strategies across other programs. So Alden, I'm going to forward the slide, but please join us. And everybody can see the slides, right?
Mhm.
My screen. Okay, I'm going to keep forwarding it.
Can I just say I'm so jealous that you got to go to Club Getaway.
Oh,
I watched that show. You know, there was a reality show that was shot there.
oh,
wow.
really?
Yeah,
It was awesome.
it was
Okay.
it was like a dating reality show.
Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. We should
Yeah.
maybe have a board member be able to join
Yeah,
next
there
year,
you
right?
go. That would be me.
Okay.
Next year, please. And I'll do everything too. I'll try everything
Oh,
too.
good. All right, Alden, do you wanna? I'm going to advance the slides, okay?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Great. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alden. I'm the director of data and analytics working in the district. And I'm a former Boston Public Schools educator who just completed the Harvard Strategic Data Fellowship. So kind of bringing together my education background with numbers, basically. But as we know, data in education is a lot more than just numbers. You just heard some really powerful stories and anecdotes from LaShante and Q about the work that they're doing. And the work that's being done in Norwalk is expansive, and it often involves people telling those stories. And so part of the role that I've taken on in the district is to try to quantify, to evaluate these programs in a more robust and systematic way so that we can really tell those stories to a broader audience, and we don't rely on this kind of oral history that we have of the wonderful work being done in Norwalk. And so what I wanted to start with is just this program evaluation process and how complex it can be, but how we're trying to approach program evaluation in the district, starting with My Brother's Keeper and My Sister's Keeper as a pilot. So industries today use data to optimize things, to solve problems, and to make sure that they're operating in the most effective way possible. Education as an industry does not do this very well. Examples of where it works are few and very far between. And that's actually what got me started in this work is in the Boston Public Schools. There was a proposal when I was working there to move school start times back for adolescents. The research is very robust that teenagers do better when school starts a little bit later in the morning. And this proposal was shot down basically because a lot of the elementary school parents went to the school board and protested, and that's why that proposal didn't end up passing. So what was best for kids was went to the wayside in honor of something that was more politically motivated and at the whims of the administration, at the whims of the school board. A lot of stuff sounds good in education, but might not be working as it should be in service of students. So that's why I got really excited about program evaluation, and that's what brought me in one way or another here to Norwalk. So with regards to My Brother's Keeper, this kind of cycle of program evaluation starts with defining the program. And when I first started talking with LaShante and Q, we've crossed paths at a number of different junctures. They do a lot here, as you've heard. But we started talking about My Brother's Keeper, and I started hearing these anecdotes. But really defining the program is the first step, because then you have to identify what you're trying to do, what you're trying to optimize. And so the common thread that you're starting to hear through those anecdotes, I think a lot of the MBK, MSK program has become crystallized through the experiences that they've been having. They weren't given a lot of direction, as you heard. The Obama administration kind of left the mission of MBK rather vague. And then LaShante was given MSK, which was also like, just do the same thing for girls. It wasn't like we're trying to optimize test scores in this particular subject area. And because of that vagueness, it's actually kind of been a challenge that I think LaShante and Q have done a good job navigating. But defining what it's supposed to do was kind of the first step in that type of program evaluation. And if you go to the next slide, Sandra, so after you kind of define what the program's trying to do, which is what I put at the top here, this was kind of the research question that started to guide what we were doing with program evaluation. And that research question was, to what extent does MBK and MSK affect Black students' orientation towards school? And the reason that question guided a lot of the work is that it brings together the kinds of experiences and anecdotes that LaShante and Q just told you about, but they also guide it in a specific way that involves things that we can measure. And the reason that it's valuable to be able to measure it is because then we can know what's working, what's not working, what kinds of programs and services are going to be most effective when we're designing things for MBK and MSK students to do. And so with that being said, we then had to think about what kind of program evaluation we were going to do. So there's many different kinds. You can assess the need for a certain program in the district. You can assess the efficacy of which a program is operating in service of its outcome. You can also evaluate whether the program is operating with fidelity. Some programs don't achieve outcomes because they're not working well, and others don't achieve outcomes because the outcome isn't connected to the services they're doing. And you can also do impact evaluation. And that's really what we're trying to do here is, once we have this research question, we're trying to think about Black students' orientation towards school, their sense of belonging in school, and specifically their achievement identity, their orientation towards academics, their orientation towards leadership. And once we quantify all those things and decide on the outcomes that we're trying to optimize, then we can start to see the extent to which we are achieving them. MBK is a really, really compelling case study because, firstly, the program was ill-defined, so that makes it really challenging, but I think that's been navigated well, and I've addressed that. And the second reason is that the criteria for which a student entered into MBK and MSK, like LaShante and Q just told you, there's always kids that are saying, how can I join? How can I join? It actually was like kind of fuzzy how kids became a part of this program. It expanded across grade levels over time. There were different kinds of students being involved in different types of programs. And that made it like it wasn't a clear, quantifiable way that kids qualified for this program. So this quantitative method decision tree ends up taking you down a path where basically we had to use a mixed methods approach to try to evaluate this question. And so, Sandra, if you go to the next slide here, this is what we ended up kind of coalescing around as a way of understanding the effectiveness of the program towards that mission of increasing students' achievement identity, Black students' achievement identity. So firstly, we're using a quantitative approach. We're borrowing from the panorama results that we've been taking as a district for a number of years, and we're basically looking at students that participate in the program compared to Black students who are not participating in the program. So we have a really robust comparison group, and just being able to say over time and compared to those non-participants, how much do students feel a sense of belonging and a sense of connectedness, a sense of excitement towards school. There's a lot of specific questions that Panorama has that are validated by psychometricians that allow us to like really understand how students are feeling towards these things. And that's great. Those numbers are wonderful, but they don't actually tell you the extent to which MBK and MSK are impacting those numbers. And that's why, like Lashante said, we had to have this qualitative component to complement that research. And so what we did together, and what I lent some support with, I talked to a former professor that I had that worked in this area, and we developed a focus group protocol to really start to dig into the mechanism by which MBK is affecting Black students' achievement identity, their feelings towards their school, their cultural competence, and their attitudes towards academic excellence as a result of this program. And so we've really gone one step beyond. When we initially had some surveys of MBK and MSK, they were kind of surface level. Do you like this program? Do you feel connected to the adults here? Now we're like really digging into, with these focus groups, we're going to have some awesome collaborative discussions around race and racialized achievement identity that I think will lead to some like really promising results. So those are going to be coming up at the end of January. And I think between those two things, we'll have like a really compelling way to tell the story of MBK in a way that transcends these anecdotes and really like emphasizes the effect of the program. So anyway, that's like a brief pilot of the way that we're thinking about program evaluation. And like Sandra said, I hope this becomes kind of the standard by which we think about our programs in the future, not just so that we can like decide on the best ways to spend our time and optimize the way that we're thinking about serving our students, but also so that we can optimize the programs that students are participating in. Like this program could learn from this analysis, learn from these, we're going to get some awesome data from these collaborative conversations that we have with the kids. And I think that that's also going to like inform future sessions with that Lashante and Q design. And I think that can be really powerful as well. So yeah, that's how we're thinking about it.
Any questions for Alden?
Can't wait to see what the numbers
Yeah.
look like after. Looking forward to
But
that.
it's sort of a preview to something that we'll bring to you in a bit.
I'm glad you were able to use a tool that's already, in use, the panorama. That's helpful instead of having to rescale, redo something. So that's fantastic.
And lastly, did you want to review this slide?
Speaking of preliminary results, yeah, so I started to run some of
Okay.
this code today. I could just give you the basic results, but like these kinds of graphs, you'll see the blue bars in the top graph right there on the left. Those blue bars represent My Brother's Keeper responses to these 5 questions on the Panorama survey about engagement and 5 questions about school belonging. You'll notice the blue bars are higher than the gray bars for most areas. There's somewhere they're not, and I think that's the kind of thing where I'm saying like kids aren't necessarily feeling like they're approaching class with an invigorated focus as a result of MBK. That's one where they might do some work around like how they can build that sort of thing. But kids are, for example, in MBK, approaching class with a much higher interest. They're showing up to class, they're feeling interested in what they're doing. MBK students are relative to Black students that are not participating in MBK. So there's something going on there that's working very well. And I think teasing out these kind of things can be really helpful. And like I said, like the 2023 survey results got us responses like, MBK helped me have less stress when it comes to work, or I need a reason and a push every now and then to focus on what I need to do. These are quotes from those surveys. But the 2024 questions we're going to ask about in the focus groups are going to be really like geared towards this specific thing that we're trying to understand and optimize. Like, how do you think race and racism affect how you feel about school and your ability to succeed? Like really deep conversations, I think, should come out of this. And we're very excited about that. So we'll share more results as we get them, but that's kind of the preliminary work that we're doing so far.
So Alden will be back. And then finally, just to give you a very brief update on the grading for equity work, because we have been giving you updates throughout. It's that we do have this year-long cohort design that we are hoping to launch. Because we have stipend positions or stipends for educators to engage in the evaluation of other assessments, like the Portrait of the Graduate assessment, we actually identified funding so that we can have teachers participate in this year-long cohort or half a year-long cohort for the grading for equity assessment evaluations, and for this, they call it a research action study. And so we have identified that it's through a grant. We have the job description written, and it's currently in negotiations with NFT. So Mary Jordan sent back a draft with some questions. I responded to some of the questions, sent it off to the Crescendo group to get some of their input on it. And so we're aiming to have 16 teachers identified for a spring cohort. So that's the only update that I can provide at the moment, is that it's in negotiations. But I did want you to know that there is some movement on the part of actually getting folks on board to do this action research project. Any questions regarding that?
Do you have a timeline? I guess you said that the document.
I sent it back, and so then negotiations sort of
Yeah.
go that way, where now I'm waiting for NFT's response to my response.
Well, it's great that we got up to this point.
Yes, that is true. Okay. But we will keep updating you as part of our agenda, always on those 3 focus areas.
Okay.
Right.
So with this, I wanted to just talk to you about some next steps. And Allison, do you want to talk about next steps with Leading with Hearts and Mind?
With the Leading with Hearts and Mind work, the next steps are school leaders will work in collaboration with their equity team leads to plan a professional learning series for the spring. Now that the leaders and the leads have engaged in some of this learning around implicit bias, they will create a learning series for their schools that all staff will participate in.
And we can provide you some of those topic examples next time, because we are going to survey the schools to see what are they thinking in terms of those learning series. And hopefully by then I'll be able to report that we have the stipend positions up, and that we've gotten people to apply. And then we'll provide you another MBK, MSK data update, just to see where we're at with that work, and bring you some other data points that Kara had mentioned, or any other topics that you can think of, we can certainly include in the next agenda. I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay. And Sherry, I'm going to turn the meeting back to you.
Yes, so I just want to thank all of you for this very comprehensive presentation. It's a lot of really good information that you provided. Cara, did you want to add anything before we close out the meeting?
No, just that I feel like, I think this is our second meeting this year for this committee, but every time we meet and you guys present, it's like heartening and really positive work that all of you are doing. So thank you for your commitment to everything that you're doing. It's critical for our students. And so just really appreciate what you're doing.
It's really important for me because this is something that I ran on, and I can tell you I've been in the district long enough to be able to say there was a time when this didn't matter.
Yeah.
And there weren't folks in place who were trying to get at it and to make it better. And so it's very heartening for me to see that we're making progress.
Actual progress being made. And I love the data aspect of it too.
Absolutely, to have the numbers to go along with
that's awesome that you're like really trying to understand like what is the impact of these programs. So that's awesome.
Great. And Marianne, usually she will join us from now on. I mean, she wasn't for the first one, but she was at the last meeting. She was ill today, so she was actually supposed to present on Paul Forbes's work, but she will be here the next time.
Sure. I hope she's okay.
The 3 of us will always approach the work together, because it has been really, as you could see, it has been a team effort from the people that we have from outside that are experts in the field, but also the people internally that we rely on. And some other in-house experts have risen to the challenge, like Dr. Reynolds and Q and LaShante. So we've been very fortunate with this team approach.
That's great.
And Alden, obviously.
Yes, welcome to the team.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing else to that end, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Cara. Meeting is adjourned 6:04 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for all that
Thanks,
information.
everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Thank you,
night.
guys. Thank you, everybody that joined us. We really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Have a
one.
good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.